What's going on, guys? Dawkbro back again. Hope you're fantastic today, and welcome back to another Fazbear Frights summary, where we're going to be doing the CLIFFS today. The first story of the CLIFFS is the CLIFFS, and as you can see from the cover, it looks pretty cool, right? It's about a broken Freddy plushie, and the story's really short. Actually, you can see here. It's this one right here. It's very short. It's about 50 pages long. So the CLIFFS is the first story. The breaking wheel is the second story. And the third story is He Told Me Everything. I've seen some people tell me that these stories are a bit meh. The breaking wheel is supposed to be the best one. The last one's supposed to be really weird and complicated and just random. But I read the CLIFFS, guys, and it's okay. It's okay. Quick review. It's okay. I'd actually give it about a 6 or a 7. It was really short. Nothing really exciting happened. It was actually really sad, and I liked the ending. The ending was nice, and nothing really scary or spooky happens, guys. It's very mysterious. And a friend of mine called Entom had a really nice theory at the end of this story, and the ending can mean something different to what meets the eye. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, I did find the story a bit meh, honestly, like a 6. I'm going to go down to a 6. Might go up later to a 7, if recapping it. Before I start today's video, viewer discretion is advised for this one, because it talks a lot about suicide. That's a warning for you right now. It talks a lot about suicide and everything. So yeah, the CLIFFS. Okay, Robert is the dad. Okay, Robert is a dad, and he's got a 2-year-old son called Tyler. He's a single parent, guys, and his wife, Anna, has died. Really, really sad. So he's a single parent trying to deal with a 2-year-old toddler. And Robert is very, very stressed, guys. Very, very stressed. He has like a toddler manual book just to double check everything he's done to look after Tyler. He works all the time to, you know, keep the money going in the going through. And he's so busy all the time. He doesn't have time to talk to anybody. He's just very tired all the time and very miserable and missing Anna. And Tyler's the only one who is keeping him alive, basically. The house where they live is next to the town's most notorious geographical feature, the CLIFFS. The CLIFFS has a grisly history, and it's called Jumper's Cliff, okay? This is apparently where lots of suicides have happened over the generations, people jumping off the cliff, lots of fact stories, tales, and lots of fictional tales as well. Haunted stories saying that the cliffs are haunted and cursed. And Robert was scared of the cliffs. Robert didn't want to go there because, you know, the spooky tales about it. Robert and Anna moved there on their first year, guys. They have a lovely marriage, and their first year has been amazing, okay? Anna gets pregnant with Tyler. You know, the house is really well. Robert doesn't even think about the CLIFFS at all when they're living there. It's just a really good first year of marriage and a really happy couple. And 2 months before Tyler's born, Anna passes away of a stroke. But Tyler is saved, but is, you know, not fully developed yet, so has to stay in hospital. But Anna does pass away while being pregnant with Tyler and has a stroke, high blood pressure. It's a really, really sad backstory of Robert. So yeah, like I said, Robert's busy all of the time looking after Tyler. Robert is painfully lonely, but was too busy and exhausted to even think about his own feelings. Tyler looks very much like Anna as well. And when Robert looks at Tyler, he can see his wife, so sometimes he gets really overwhelmed by it, and loves Tyler, but he's also scared at the same time, and he's worried if he ever loses Tyler. Like, he's lost Anna, so what if he loses Tyler as well? You know, like what a lot of people overthink in life. You know, if they have a kid, the kid's the most, you know, important thing in your life, so you know, people will overthink things like that and worry about stuff like that. That's what the brain does. Robert hasn't mentioned to Tyler that, you know, he's a single dad. Tyler doesn't know about Anna. Tyler doesn't know about his mom. Because he's still very, very hurt of Anna's death, Robert is. He doesn't want to think about Anna. He doesn't want to... Robert is still going through a lot of grief. A year later, he's still going through a lot of grief, still missing Anna. And after Tyler's been picked up from school, They have to go to the supermarket to buy some food and supplies, right? And on the shelf, guys, is this little man. Tag-Along Freddy. Let me read a description about Tag-Along Freddy and what he was designed to do. He pulled the bear off the shelf and turned it over. The pictures on the back of the box showed laughing toddlers playing with Tag-Along Freddy. And interestingly, a woman dressed like she worked in an office, looking at her wristwatch and smiling like all was well in the world. Robert read the text on the back of the package. Tag-Along Freddy is a kid's and a parent's best pal. Freddy goes where your little one goes and sends you live updates on your Tag-Along time wristwatch included. So you'll know your little one is happy and safe. You may have to be out of sight sometimes, but Tag-Along Freddy is the bear who is always there. So what Tag-Along Freddy does, guys, it's like a little plushie, okay? And it's like a babysitter. Let's say Freddy and your child are downstairs, you know, playing with toys and stuff, and you have to go upstairs and do some laundry. You go upstairs and you're absolutely fine. Tag-Along Freddy watches the child and texts you on your phone saying what's happening. So I could be upstairs doing the laundry and Tag-Along Freddy will send me a message on my wristwatch and say, everything's fine, everything's safe. So yeah, that's what Tag-Along Freddy is designed to do, to look after the toddler or the child. And this is what happens with Robert, guys. Robert leaves the room when they're back home and Freddy sends him a message on the wristwatch. It's all good. I'm playing with my best buddy. So yeah, Freddy's working well, no issues yet, all good. And it's actually really wholesome at this point, guys. Tyler loves this Freddy plushie, okay? Absolutely adores it. He takes the plushie everywhere with him, like in the bath, eating food, watching TV, and playing with the toys. So it's really happy, and Robert is really happy because he can relax now. Robert even says that this Freddy plushie is making his life so much easier. And Tyler was behaving well as well. Tyler was being a good little boy. He was behaving well. He was listening to his dad. He was agreeing. He was being good. So yeah, things are looking really good for Robert. Tyler drifts off to sleep. Really, really nice day. And Tyler goes downstairs to watch TV. And Freddy messages him saying, fast asleep. Freddy texts, fast asleep. And again, Robert says it was one of the most relaxing nights he's ever had in a long time. Okay? So things are looking really good now. This Freddy plushie is amazing. Looking after Tyler. He's not stressing as much. He can go and do things instead of keeping his eye on Tyler all the time. So things are looking really good. Tyler brings Freddy to school with him. And while Robert's at work, he gets messages saying, like, they're doing well. Tyler's doing really good. He's safe and sound, having a good time, playing with the toys. So Robert at work's like, oh my God, this is amazing. This is really comforting to know that Tyler's doing well. But guys, a reminder, it's a FNAF story. So, although we get, in most of the stories, right, every single story, it starts off really happy, it starts off good, things are looking good with the FNAF animatronic, FNAF plushie, FNAF toy. And then it all goes wrong, doesn't it? It all goes wrong. So, Saturday morning after breakfast, guys, they're at the house and they've got a sandbox in the garden. So, Robert lets Tyler into the sandbox and puts Freddy next to the sandbox because Robert looks after Freddy all the time. So Tyler wanted Freddy in the bathtub. No, it will get broken. Can't put Freddy in the sandbox because he'll get dirty and get sand pieces in the wires and box and stuff. So, you know, they've got a nice relationship, all of them, like looking after each other. He puts Freddy next to the sandbox, lets Tyler go into the sandbox, guys. And Robert gets a phone call, okay? So Robert leaves the garden and goes into the house to answer the phone. He goes back into the garden. The sandbox was empty. Fear gripped Robert's heart. Tyler! He yelled. Tyler! No answer. He ran up to the sandbox. He could see the indentation in the sand where Tyler had been sitting, but no Tyler. Tyler's Tag-Along Freddy still sat on the edge of the sandbox. Clearly, Freddy had not been watching. Robert looked at the open gate. It had been closed before, hadn't it? And saw a white van he didn't recognise driving away. Could Tyler be inside that van? It was the absolute worst thing he could imagine. Robert felt his Tag-Along Freddy wristwatch vibrate. The watch's screen announced a message from Freddy. He tapped the icon. A one-word message appeared on the screen. Gone. Gone? Robert screamed. Gone? How is that supposed to help me? He kicked the stuffed bear as hard as he could, sending it sailing across the yard. So, guys, Tyler's gone missing. Tyler's gone, guys. Tyler's disappeared. The gate's open. He sees a van drive off, thinking that Tyler's been kidnapped or something. But at the end of the day, Tyler's gone. Okay, Tyler is missing. He rings the police straight away, and the police say they're going to try as much as they can to try and find Tyler. You can imagine how distraught this is, right? Robert's lost Tyler, his son. He was thinking about it the other day, saying what would happen, like, I don't know what I would do, and Tyler's gone, okay? Now, remember, guys, Freddy is just a plushie, right? But it's interesting how Freddy did not text Robert saying, Tyler's running away, quick, come in, come in. He doesn't say anything until after, and Freddy says gone, just that word, gone. You got to remember, though, as well, guys, it's just a plushie, okay? The plushie can't get up and walk and follow Tyler everywhere. It's literally just a stuffed plushie with a monitor and stuff inside, like a safety monitor. That's it. 8 hours later, guys, Tyler is still missing, okay? So now things are getting really, really bad. 8 hours and the police still have not found Tyler. Out of nowhere, guys, Freddy sends Robert a message and says, why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? And obviously Robert has already got a phobia of the cliffs, right? He's scared of that place because, you know, that's where a lot of people commit suicide. So, and he's been having some suicidal thoughts in the past as well because of the loss of his wife. And now Tyler's gone. So now this is bad, okay? He's lost Tyler, he's panicking, he doesn't know what to do. And Robert feels like the bear is tempting him to go to the cliffs and jump, okay? That's what he reads the message as. Why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you jump off? That's what Robert thinks, okay? And he feels like the bear is mocking him. He feels like the bear's mocking him, telling him to go to the cliffs to end it all, okay? So Robert throws it in the garbage. He's had enough of this plushie. That plushie has made me lose my child. And he's mocking me now, telling me to go to the cliffs. Shoves him into the garbage. The police ring, and Tyler's still missing. And Robert is really upset now. He's throwing up. He's overthinking everything. He's really, really panicking, like anybody would. He gets another text from Freddy. Why don't you go to the cliffs? Everything had been normal until Freddy came along. Tyler's only been missing since Freddy's came, okay? So Robert gets the Freddy back out of the trash can, starts punching it, beating it up, and sets fire to it, okay? He completely destroys this Freddy plushie. Really, really bad. He burns the bear to death, and he says, Robert thinks, if he destroys the bear, it might help him find Tyler. Or at least, you know, stop telling Robert to kill himself. That's what Robert says. Because he feels like this Freddy plushie is a curse, and the Freddy plushie has caused Tyler to be missing. So he's destroying it, taking all his anger out on him, and obviously to stop him from texting him all the time, telling him to go to the cliffs. And Robert goes to bed, and he gets another text from Freddy. Why don't you go to the cliffs? Same thing happening again. So Robert gets out of the trash can again, looks at the Freddy doll, and it's completely charred, right? It's completely destroyed. But apparently to Robert, it looks like the Freddy doll was grinning at him. all charred to death, but still smiling at Robert. And Robert says that he's losing his mind now, really losing his mind. He's going insane. And the bear looked evil, according to Robert. And the bear caused all of this to happen. So Robert is blaming the bear again for everything. So, to destroy the bear even more, he gets into the car and starts running over the plushie like a pancake, just squishing the plushie to try and destroy it. And while he's doing that, the phone rings and the police are telling him, we've got the search dogs out now. We're going to find Tyler. And we've also found all of the white vans around the area that had like all of the number plates and stuff. So we will find Tyler. Don't worry. We've got this covered. Okay. But Robert is going insane now. His son is missing and he's losing his mind at the same time because Freddy keeps texting him, telling him to go to the cliffs. Okay, so Robert is going crazy now, guys. And ironically, again, Robert gets another text from Freddy after running him over. Why don't you go to the cliffs? And according to Robert, it was working. Robert was getting more and more helpless and wanting to go to the cliffs. He was starting to consider it. He was starting to consider it to go to the cliffs to jump off. He couldn't take the stress anymore. He can't take it. If Anna's gone, if Tyler's gone, he wants to jump. He can't take this anymore. It's torture to him. And he looks in the mirror and he looks like he's gone 20 years older, guys. He looks in the mirror. He looks an absolute mess. He looks really, really bad. So he decides to have a shower and to try and relax a little bit. And in the shower, he has some really happy memories with Tyler and Anna on his first birthday. Thinking about all the happy memories that they had together. And while he's having those memories and relaxing about it, the echoing of Freddy's words are in the background of his memories. Why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? Constantly in his head, like it's been imprinted in his brain over and over again. He's just gone really mad, guys. All of this has happened at once, and Freddy is still doing all this at the same time. It would make anybody insane, okay? It really, really would. And Robert remembers and says, oh, yeah, it is right. Tag-Along Freddy will always be here. Always, even if it's been destroyed. So again, guys, he wants to see Freddy again, so he gets out the shower. He goes to the car, picks up the Freddy plushie and starts stabbing it with scissors, guys. He starts ripping it apart and starts destroying the plushie. What do I have to do to make you go away? Robert yelled as he kept on stabbing the little bear. Why don't you just die? You're not even supposed to be alive. The bear's chest was slashed into ribbons. Bits of stuffing poked out between the tears. Robert was debating ripping out the stuffing when his wristwatch vibrated. He knew what to expect. He knew it would be awful. But the little flutter of hope from somewhere inside of him whispered, what if? What if it's news about Tyler? What if I can save him? He took a deep breath and tapped a message from Freddy. Why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? Just constantly, guys, constantly. Why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? He's had enough, guys. Robert is now insane. So he says, fine. If I'm going to the cliffs, we are going together. So he brings the Freddy plushie with him, guys, and they drive to the cliffs. We will go to the cliffs together. And yeah, guys, this is when Robert wants to jump off the cliff. He wants to go and kill himself, guys. He can't take it anymore. And Freddy has just kept constantly saying, go to the cliffs, that it's tempted him to do it. We know he's going to go and kill himself, guys, because Robert toyed briefly with the idea of leaving a note. But who would read it? Who would care? If he had anybody left to write a note to, he wouldn't be going to the cliffs in the first place. So he feels lost, guys. He was going to leave a note. So yeah, Robert is definitely wanting, at this point, to go to the cliffs and jump. Now, guys, I'm going to read you the last couple of pages because this is like the interesting part of the story and you guys can debate what happens, okay? So, Robert and Freddy go to the cliffs and this is what happens. He ran until he reached the cliffs. he made a beeline for the one everybody could call Jumper's Cliff. Still holding his small stuffed enemy, when he stood at the summit and looked down at the rocky ground far below, it felt like his stomach dropped into his shoes. He had always been afraid of heights, but had always considered it a sensible fear. It wasn't crazy to be afraid of something that could actually kill you. And now, even though death was his goal, he still felt afraid when he looked down. Robert held up the teddy bear and stared at it. "This is what you want, right?" he asked. Tears clouded Robert's eyes as he thought of Anna dying on the operating table during what should have been the happiest occasion of their life, the birth of their son. She never would have chosen to make such an early exit from life. She wouldn't have wanted Robert to make an early exit either, especially when, unlike her, he had a choice. The living Robert had been doing since Anna died wasn't really living. Anna wouldn't have wanted that for him either. She wouldn't have wanted him to shut out his friends and eat sad little sandwiches at his desk at work. She would have wanted him to go out with his co-workers and eat half-price sushi. She would have wanted him to enjoy fatherhood, but also enjoy the company of other grown-ups. Anna had loved life and had loved Robert. She wouldn't have wanted him to give up on himself. And she wouldn't have wanted him to give up on Tyler either, not when there was even a small hope that he might be alive. He thought of Tyler when he would stretch his arms up and say, "Pick me up, Daddy," when he would giggle and say, "Daddy, silly," or when they would play Tickle Monster or the rhyming game or read books together. It was easy to get overwhelmed by the daily stresses of parenting, the effort of keeping a child clean and fed and cared for, day in and day out. And it was undeniable the will of a toddler often posed a formidable challenge. But the truth was that most of the time he and Tyler spent together was great. He wouldn't trade it for anything. If there was just one small chance he could hear his little boy's voice again. Robert held up the despised bear and stared into the empty eyes. He drew back his arm and pitched the doll as hard as he could over the edge of the cliff. He spat over the ledge in defiance of what the evil toy had almost made him do, of what he had almost let the toy make him do. "Tyler wouldn't want me to!" Robert screamed after the bear plummeted to the rocks below. His voice echoed, "Two, two, two," in the canyon. Robert looked down at the rocks below, but also up at the sky, where the dawn had turned the clouds a rosy pink, the colour of a dress Anna used to wear. He always told her that dress brought out the roses in her cheeks. Anna had wanted to live. Tyler, please let him still be alive, Robert thought. Wanted to live. The two of them would want Robert to live too. Robert looked down at the rocky ground beneath him and then up at the pink clouds above him. Life was hard, but it could also be beautiful. The two he loved most in the world wouldn't want him to lose sight of that. As the sun rose, Robert heard the early morning chirping of birds and the cry of some small animal he couldn't identify. The mewling of a kitten, perhaps? The cries were coming from below him, in one of the many holes that had created shallow miniature caverns in the rock's face. The more Robert listened to the cries, he decided they sounded almost human. Could it be? Robert's heart felt as though it might pound right out of his chest. He made his way to the underside of the cliff. He had to resist the dangerous temptation to run. How embarrassing that would be if he had decided to live and then fell off the cliff by accident. As he got closer to the caverns, the cries became more distinct. A high keening that could be a wounded animal, but also could be a frightened human child. Robert stood in front of the openings, in the rock face, hoping that he could see his son and not a wounded animal that might attack him out of fear. "Tyler!" he yelled. "Tyler? Is that you?" Daddy! Tyler's voice, weak from crying, came from the hole nearest Robert. Daddy, Daddy, come get me! The hole wasn't wide enough for Robert's shoulders to fit through. I can't fit in that hole, buddy. You're gonna have to come to me. Come towards my voice, buddy. You can do it. He could hear scrabbling in the hole, and then, in what could have been more than a minute, Tyler's head poked out of the rocky opening like some kind of woodland creature. He held out his arms and Robert scooped him up and hugged him. Tyler was dirty and sweaty from his overnight stay in the caverns, but to Robert, he still smelled sweeter than anything else in the world. You scared me half to death, buddy, Robert said, holding Tyler close. Why in the world did you run off like that? I saw a doggy, Tyler said, like it was the most logical answer in the world. So you tried to follow the doggy and got lost? Uh-huh. Tyler rested his head on Robert's shoulder. Well, that's really dangerous, buddy. You should never leave the yard unless I'm with you. Promise me you'll never do that again. Okay, Daddy, Tyler said. Robert hoped he meant it. Good. Let's go home. Yeah, carry me, Tyler said, and Robert could hear the tiredness in his voice. Okay, buddy. Robert was tired too, but now that he had found his son, he felt like he had the strength to carry him for 1,000,000 miles. As Robert carefully walked away from Jumper's cliff, Tyler said, Daddy. Yes, buddy? I'm thirsty. I bet you are. We'll get you a big cup of water as soon as we get home. And can I have a peanut, Nana? Sure. Robert knew the kid must have been starving. He hadn't eaten since breakfast the day before. Robert was happy to have the opportunity to make Tyler his favourite snack again. Sliced bananas with peanut butter to dip them in. Toddlers like to eat things they could dip into some things. And I'll make my special mac and cheese for supper, okay? Yummy! Honestly, Robert's mac and cheese wasn't anything special, just a mix from a blue box. But it would be special because Tyler was back and unharmed, and they would be eating together. From now on, all their time together would be special. A thought occurred to Robert as they reached to the lower cliffs. Hang on just a second, buddy. I want to see something. Without getting too close to the edge, Robert peered down in the direction in which he had thrown Tag-Along Freddy. The little bear was nowhere to be seen. What you see, Daddy? Tyler asked. Nothing, buddy, but look how pretty the sky is. Your mama used to have a dress the colour of those clouds. He decided he would no longer keep silent about Anna. Tyler needed to hear about his mom, just as Robert needed to talk about her. If they talked about her, if they thought about her, there was a way in which she would still be with them. Mommy pretty, Tyler said. Yeah, she was, Robert said. Would you like to look at some pictures of your mommy sometime soon? Yeah, Tyler said. Tomorrow, Robert decided he would take all of the photos of Anna down from the attic. He could put some on the mantle in the living room and maybe one in Tyler's room too. We'll do that tomorrow then, Robert said. And I can tell you some stories about her too. Your mummy was very pretty and smart and nice. Daddy's nice too, Tyler said. It was a high compliment from a 2-year-old. Thanks, buddy. I love you, Robert said, holding Tyler securely as he walked farther and farther away from the cliffs. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, buddy. Robert set Tyler down on the ground. Tyler slipped his hand into his daddy's and they walked together towards home. And that's the end of the cliffs, guys. So, the ending is really nice, right, guys? The initial thought is that the ending is really nice, and Tag-Along Freddy, all this time, was not tempting Robert to go to the cliffs to jump off. He was telling Robert where Tyler was all this time. Go to the cliffs, go to the cliffs. That's where Tyler is, okay? That's the initial thought. That's the first, what it looks like from the story, that Freddy was just being nice and just telling Robert to go to the cliffs to rescue Tyler, okay? And Robert goes to the cliffs, gets really angry at the plushie, throws him down, all the way down, and Tyler's there at the bottom as well. And he's been there all day, by the looks of things. He's dirty, he's hungry, he's thirsty. So Tyler's just been at the cliffs, just hiding there, because he left the garden and followed a dog and went away and did what he wanted. He was only 2 years old, guys. You've got to think that's what kids would do, right? Being left alone, he would just get up and walk away, and he got lost. He followed a dog. We don't know what the dog is, just a normal dog, and it leads him to the cliffs, and he gets lost there, and he's been there all day. The Freddy plushie has been messaging Robert all day saying, why don't you go to the cliffs? Why don't you go to the cliffs? Because that's where Tyler is, okay? But Robert misunderstands that, and Robert thinks that the Freddy plushie is tormenting him, telling him to go to the cliffs to kill himself. But it looks like the bear was just telling him where Tyler is. The most interesting part of that story is that the Freddy plushie is gone. So Robert looks down with Tyler to look back down, and the Freddy plushie is not there anymore, okay? So, my friend Entom's theory is that Robert's gone that mad that he literally thinks that the Freddy plushie is Tyler. So, he goes down to the cliffs and imagines the Freddy plushie is Tyler, okay? Let me know your thoughts on that, because it's interesting. So, Robert drops the Freddy plushie down, and then he hears Tyler, okay? So he goes down, he finds Tyler, gets him, and looks back down, and the Freddy plushie is gone. Could it be that Robert has gone so insane and with grief and loss that he thinks that the Freddy plushie that he dropped down is Tyler? Because the Freddy plushie is missing when he looks back down. Who knows, guys? Have a think about that. I think it might work in the FNAF lore, you know, because it is a FNAF story. And with all of the FNAF stories, you know, it could mean something. But I don't know, guys. The fact that, you know, Tyler's messy and it says he's thirsty and he's tired and he's been there all day. I don't know. It could be. Because, you know, Robert talks about the sky as well. And he talks about his wife and stuff. It could be a lot of different things. It could be that Robert actually fell down. Robert did jump down with the plushie. And he's a spirit with Tyler. Who knows, guys? It's a lot of different ideas. But I still think I want it to be the wholesome story. Where there was no badness of the plushie. There was no darkness inside the Freddy plushie. And the Freddy plushie was just trying to help Robert. And all of this story, all the bad stuff that's happened is just in Robert's mind. And he's gone insane. He just misinterprets what Freddy's trying to tell him. And Freddy's telling him that he's at the cliffs, because that's where he is. But the interesting part, guys, is that the Freddy plushie is gone afterwards, okay? He's gone. So what happens with the Freddy plushie, we don't know, okay? Maybe it just completely exploded when he dropped it and all the parts have just gone. We don't know, guys. Let me know your thoughts on the ending. The more I think about the ending, the more interesting it is actually. It's a very short story, guys. That's why the summary was so quick. But let me know your thoughts, guys, on that. It's an interesting story. So what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Robert's got insane and he's thinking that Tyler is alive and it's in his imagination? Or do you think it was just a happy ending? That Freddy was literally just trying to tell Robert that Tyler was at the cliffs. So that was the cliffs, guys. The next story is the longest one in the book and apparently the best story out of all three. And it is the breaking wheel. Okay? Thank you so much for watching, guys. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed me reading the last few pages. I might do that for every story now on. Just read the last 6 pages just to give you guys an idea rather than just summarising everything. So let me know. Lots of love. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you all next time.